Hello, friends. We are 9 interviews into this series, and I wanted to thank you so much for joining me. And if you haven't caught up, it's okay. We will have another 6 yet to go, but they will be spread out throughout the rest of December and all of January. I've got a cold right now, so I'm not showing my face because it's bad enough that you have to listen to my stopped up nose. I know this time of the year is crazy busy for everybody, and I hope that this series is giving you a nice welcome reprieve if necessary, and is just something that you have been enjoying in your life. If it is something that you've been enjoying in your life and felt particularly inspired by some of the things that these people have said, there's an opportunity that will be beginning in February to join me on a 4-month journey of the self. We're going to be covering various aspects of being a fully awakened, healthy, and realized human being. And we will be doing so by going through several different modules. And this is the first time that I'm telling the world at large what those modules will be. There are 8 of them, which will include physical, emotional, mental aspects of our life, as well as spiritual and how we interact with community, what our relationship to environment is, the element of selflessness, and my particular favorite, well, it depends on the day, I suppose, but the last one is how we are expressive in the world. So all of these modules will be gone through in that 4-month exploration, and there will be more information about the program in the new year. Anyway, I will be seeing you soon, and thanks so much for being here.
Welcome, welcome. This is Alyssa with Awaken Authenticity, and I'm so pleased to introduce to you today Rachael Webb. Rachael is a woman who I originally met through belly dancing. She's a fellow original Kentuckian as well, and I've had the pleasure of watching her progress through her myriad lives within this lifetime. And watch her bloom and grow and bloom and grow and bloom and grow. And every time I'm like, well, yeah, I knew that about you. And she's like, I just figured this out about me. And I love seeing her own these aspects of herself that have been, that are just such beautiful parts of her. So yeah, that's why I have you here today. And thank you so much for joining us, Rachael.
Oh, thank you so much, Alyssa. It's such an honor to be here and to witness you stepping into this new version of yourself, and such an honor to connect to everyone who is and ever will listen to this, and just really presencing all of you and inviting within my own self that the words that come through me are elicited by the connection that exists between us throughout time and space, beyond time and space, and that, because I have no idea what Alyssa is about to ask me, and that I prefer it that way, and that whatever is brought up out of my mouth, the metaphors, the words, the tones that I use are particularly elicited by the vibration of your hearts, and that is setting that intention that we're all connected on this call in that way.
What a beautiful intention. Thank you for setting that space. So one of the things that I always appreciate in your videos is that you always say thank you to people who are watching this on the replay. And in this case, everybody's watching this on the replay because we are recording this live and no one's seeing this except you and I. So welcome to the replay. Thank you for being here, everybody. Is there anything that you would like to say as a way to introduce yourself beyond what I said?
Oh, this is like sitting in front of the caterpillar and he's like, who are you? Yeah. My name is Rachael Webb, and I am so many things. I'm I'm a spiritual business mentor. I'm a sound healer. I'm a budding free diver, and um, and I would say like a pirate on the hunt for the treasure of my past, so that I can bring through gifts and talents and wisdom from beyond this lifetime into this lifetime to be of greater service and reclaiming all parts of myself. And whenever I'm into something in such an obsessive kind of way, I want everyone else to do it too. So
Yes. Yes. Oh, the last time we spoke, you said in Lakesh, and can you tell us a little bit more about what that is?
yeah, it's I'll first say too that it's just a phrase that I'm only recently introduced to, and it comes from the Mayan language and mythology, which I'm not an expert in. But what it means is I am another you. And so, like, as we sit and stare at each other in our computer screens, and it's Alyssa, you're starting off on this adventure, and I've been on this adventure for a while, and I'm diving into new things that you've been into for a while. So it's like we're all reflections of each other, and all connected to the same essence. So those heartstrings that connect us all in the web of light, that's all part of the same material, and so we are all the same and different at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. In Lakesh, I am another you. I love that. That's like, I love how it feels very loving, and it feels like, and it's an appreciation of the things that matter to us, and that we can all it feels like it's a mantra of compassion almost. I like it a lot. Anyway, thank you. So first of all, one of the main reasons that I wanted to have you here tonight is because you represent to me somebody who, in a very loud and intentional way, came out of the magic closet. And I think that when people are going through big transitions, they may or may not have a moment where they like kind of express themselves as who they really are. But regardless of how that transition is made, I think that it's scary, and there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of vulnerability at stake. And I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit of your experience and process.
Around coming out of the magic closet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I want to talk about like what is the magic closet? Mm-hmm. And in my experience, the magic closet is it's kind of like Harry Potter, in his little closet underneath the stairs. And he thought that he was a normal kid, and he was confused about why he wasn't a normal kid. And I think that that's the case. And then he also like had these other abilities that could be sometimes confusing for him, or that other people didn't approve of or made fun of in some way. And so I think many of us are in that magic closet. And and it's kind of like like, for example, like when I was first starting my acupuncture practice, I wanted to like dress in all black and like be very professional, and that was fine for a time because that felt safe. But then over a while, it's like it starts to get cramped inside that closet. And also too, the more work that you do on yourself, the more that you discover about yourself, the bigger you are. And then it just becomes like really, really tight in there. And so then sometimes it's like I'm coming out of the closet, or sometimes it's just kind of like you just don't go back one day. So and also too, it's like the magic closet isn't, I don't think that it's something that you step out of and then you never find yourself in again.
Right.
You know, there's layers of it. So, you know, although it's like, you know, I might have like, you know, come out of the magic closet years ago and people like see me as like pretty like out there and expressed, like, you know, like in this class that I'm doing now, I'm like teaching astrology for the first time. And, you know, one of my friends is like, do you know about astrology? And I was like, oh, I've been studying it since I was 17, you know? And so it's like, you know, being more at peace with who we are and who we've been in private, you know, to ourselves and bringing that out more. So, you know, so my story starts back in around like 2013. And so I had, you know, finished acupuncture school. I had started my practice the year before. And so I was doing all the things, you know, to, you know, have a successful practice, going to networking events and, you know, wearing black and getting business cards printed and joining BNI and all of those things. And so, but I also at that same time, that summer of 2013, started working with psychedelics for the very first time in my life. And, you know, my friend, I'd always said that I didn't want to do that because I was like, I live there anyway. Like, why would I want to go there? I later found out that I don't live there. That where I live is quite magical indeed, but it's not there. You know, he said, he was like, you know, there's going to be this moment where it's like it's a transition point in your life where there's going to be like your life before psychedelics and then your life after psychedelics. And that's quite true. And really one of the most empowering things that happened on that first journey was that I had done a meditation a couple of weeks before with the women's group on a call, and it was a journey to meet our future selves. And so I met my future self in that meditation, and she's continued to be, you know, this like pull forward. And when I was, you know, having my first psychedelic experience with LSD, I went into the bathroom and in the mirror, I saw my future self and actually like flipped back and forth so that I could see myself and I could see her. And it was that moment, but it was also just like having the real felt experience of like, oh wow, there's an alternate reality and it's very real. And I've thought that it was real through like flashing lights and like fairies and dreams and things like that. But here it is like, whoa, very much in my face. And it was that like affirmation of like, yeah, this is real. This is true. And so then I continued from there. Like I went to Burning Man and then I started working with a shaman, and started to bring more and more of this, you know, shamanic, otherworldly type of work into my acupuncture practice. And I was, you know, I was doing acupuncture, but I was, you know, wearing galactic leggings with like little like sequins on my face and little crystals on my face. And I was doing, you know, not crystal bowls, but like, you know, Tibetan bowls and doing crystal grids and essential oils and all kinds of shamanic work inside my acupuncture practice. And I was feeling really good about it. And it was feeling really quick in the vocabulary of that language. And then my friend Brett, who I've told this story with her many times, so we have a good laugh about it. But she was working for this huge Ayurvedic company, and she wanted to do some interviews. And so she was going to like do several interviews for me. And so she sent over the interview questions, and thank goodness she went to Yosemite for the weekend, because I really probably would have just called her and just like lit her on fire. But I received the questions, and it was like, what acupuncture point is good for weight loss? And what acupuncture point is good for headaches? And like, and all of this like really kind of like, you know, like she was even asking about like skincare, which was something that I had like very, very first started out doing. And I just felt so incredibly unseen. And I was just like, how, like, is she not my friend? Like, how has I felt like my communication in the online world and to my groups of friends had been really clear. And I was like, oh my goodness, somehow she's not getting the message. And so she's asking me these questions that are like asking someone, you know, from like a year ago, who I was a year ago. And I was just like, like, I can't believe that, you know, she thinks that this is who I am and that she wants to like talk to me about this stuff. And so I got super upset, and that was when I was like, okay, I'm going to get this symbol tattooed on my arm, because that was also a download that had come to me in my first visionary experience. And I was like, it needs to be on my right arm where people can see it. It needs to be visible. And that was where, and I wrote this whole blog post about why I'm not an acupuncturist. And then I wrote this blog post about coming out of the magic closet. And that was really where I was like, the first one was about me not like, I didn't want to be called an acupuncturist because I felt like I was doing so many other things that were not that, even though I was doing that. And then it was that, you know, I was like coming out of the magic closet by speaking openly about my work with psychedelics and with ayahuasca, and how those medicines had been such powerful teachers for me. And, you know, under, you know, the appropriateness and like professionalness of my, you know, who I was trying to be as this like, you know, professional person, I wasn't supposed to talk about that kind of stuff. And so I was just like, okay, that's enough. I can't handle, you know, that hiding anymore, because these things have been super, super potent, powerful teachers for me. And for my own being, I need to honor them as part of my mythical story and to bring them through.
Yeah. So, there are so many things that I want to touch on. One of them is just to acknowledge that the people watching this might not have any idea about any of that, let alone acupuncture. So I want to kind of like walk through that a little bit and make sure that that our viewers are following us. Okay. So first of all, as a background, Rachael, you studied acupuncture in San Francisco, and so you were doing that for a little while. And then when you say that you were working with psychedelics as medicine, can you tell us a little bit more about, just briefly, about the realm in which you were doing that? Would you consider it recreational? Was it, you mentioned medicine and teachers. Can you talk a little bit about the framework?
For sure. Thank you. Those are all really important guidelines. So a lot of people work with psychedelics or use psychedelics, you know, at parties or in order, like, you know, just to kind of like have a different experience on a Friday night with their friends or something. And I've never done that. It's really been more of like a ceremonial experience where it's like, you know, there's, you know, whoever is involved, we set the intention that, you know, this is going to be a sacred experience. And a lot of times what people, like alcohol included, and probably especially alcohol, but any kind of substance, a lot of people use it to escape this reality. And that's really not what we were doing. We were doing it in order to like dive deeper into this reality and really like go in with an intention of, you know, kind of like deep sea diving, where it's like we're going in with the intention of, you know, doing research or discovering treasures, and like very, you know, meticulously and with great honor and integrity, bringing the, you know, that research or those treasures that we find back into our lives. And then really it's like those psychedelic experiences were, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. That's where you get to like peek into the window of a different reality. But it's the work that you do after that that is the most potent and powerful work. And so it's even less about like, oh, right, well, you know, like you did LSD or whatever, but it's like, then since then I've been like really working with everything that I saw and creating art from it and creating information from it and educating from it and dreaming from it and yeah, changing and transforming my life from it. So to me, it's not something that's recreational. I'm not using it in any way to escape or avoid or in any type of like addictive tendencies. It's like, it's really like, you know, they always say in, you know, the psychedelic community where this is, and they actually call them entheogens instead of calling them psychedelics, because entheogens are really more these type of psychedelic medicines that are used with conscious intention as opposed to recreational use of psychedelics at a festival or something like that. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, because that's a whole different ballgame. But this work is really like setting the intention of, okay, we're going to do this with honor, and we're going to do this with the intention of discovering more about ourselves so that we can create more of the reality that we find in those realms.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that helps to kind of set the stage a little bit. And then when you were talking about seeing yourself in the mirror and your future self and yourself flipping, and you said something like, this is real, but that's real too. I would guess that most people who haven't had a similar experience might not understand how something like that, which seems like a hallucinogen, would be real. Can you explain a little bit how that feels, or what you mean by real?
Yeah, I think it's really like coming down to the felt experience of it,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like a visceral experience, like a body knowing,
Yeah.
where, you know, it's like, you know, we might have, you know, visions in our meditations that could totally be like, you know, as real as that. But, you know, at least in my experience, it's like, you know, when I have things come to me through my, like, you know, inner vision in my meditations or in dreams, or I just kind of wish it was possible, you know, it's like it still feels kind of ephemeral.
Mm-hmm.
And so then when it's like, of course, it was like I had met, you know, my future self in this meditation and I had seen her. But it was having the, like, you know, yeah, it was induced by like a hallucination, but my body like had like the felt experience. You know, it's the same thing as like me seeing you here and then you showing up in my house. And it's like, oh, like there you are. So it's really that like visual, like, you know, that like felt experience. And I'll give another example because I think it's important to take it out of the realm of, you know, of psychedelics. So because some people might have a block around that.
Okay.
But so for example, I mean, I just made an Instagram post about this, but you know, it was when I was going to Mount Shasta for the first time, and I knew about this idea of this place called Lumeria. And Lumeria is this the myth of the sunken island with the advanced civilization. So some of you might know it as Atlantis, or the ancient island of Mu, or Lumeria. And so, but there's a story that there was this landmass that was this advanced civilization that sank, and many people have a resonance with that. And so I have a resonance with that, and so I felt like, you know, I kind of knew what that vibration felt like, and I had, like, you know, images, and there's a lot of people who are into it, so it's like you can find a lot of other information about it and things. But when I was in Mount Shasta for the first time, I went to a crystal bowl ceremony where there's a woman playing amazing crystal bowls. And it was like, you know, if you've never experienced sound healing, what happens with sound healing is that, like, you actually feel the vibrations, like vibrating the water of your cells and your blood. And so she would be guiding us through a journey. And so the words that she would say was like, I wouldn't even hear the words, but like I'd have these different physiological responses. And at the very end, she said, and this is similar to like, you know, when someone says something and you get goosebumps.
Yeah.
That's actually
a lot.
yeah. So it's like, so your cells are actually designed to vibrate at the recognition of truth. And so some people call them truth bumps. And so, you know, this was kind of like next level stuff. And so she said at the very end, she was like, this is as close as I can get you to Lumeria. And she played this teal colored bowl with a white inside. And it was the physical visceral response was like, not only did I get chills, but I involuntarily burst into tears.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it was just like, you know, it was a felt experience. Even though there was nothing touching me, you know, technically you could say that was like an auditory hallucination or something. But
who cares what it's called? Like the experience is the same.
Yes. Yeah. So whether it's induced by a sound healing bowl or, you know, a chemical substance inside your body that's opening up more neurotransmitters inside your head, it's like, oh, I am feeling the truth of this moment. And, you know, similar to like a tuning fork, I'm vibrating with it. And like my cells say, yes, this is true.
Very cool. I really appreciate that, that experience. That description of that experience, because I get goosebumps a lot in all of these interviews that I've done. I'm often like, look, I've got goosebumps, you know, like I get them a lot, and I haven't really thought about what it means other than when I get goosebumps, I know that I'm really excited. So I like the idea of like, oh, that's my truth bump. That's like really, that rings true for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so to continue, and I'm sorry that this like first section, I just want to make sure that we're bringing everyone with us, but there's some lingo in the spiritual world that I'm hip to because I've been following it, even though I feel like I'm a newbie to it. But when you're talking about your tattoo, you said that it was a download, and my understanding that the word download in spiritual lingo is basically like inspiration. It's something that just comes to you, and it's like, this is coming and I have to act on it. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think I would say it's like any moment of kind of like sudden insight or revelation. And I mean, this one happened to me in Savasana. You know, it's like I'm just laying there chilling after my yoga class, not expecting anything. And then all of a sudden I see this like exact image, and I was like, oh, and I'd been looking, there was like something coming through about like gold rings or something. I just kept like getting that feeling of something, and I tried to draw it, but it wasn't working. And then there it was. And I was like, oh, and so like a download can come when you're washing the dishes, when you're walking the dog, when you're meditating, in conversations. Like a lot of times I learn just by speaking about things, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. So yeah, it's like sudden moments of insight or ahas that come through.
Yeah, I like that, because, you know, in normal everyday speak, download is specific to computer, and I feel like humans are not digital, right? Like we're very we're experiential, and we're moment to moment, and so I just wanted to make sure that people were following what you meant by download. It wasn't like you went to your computer and got a download of your tattoo. Speaking of which, I just got a download of my upcoming tattoo the other day in a Reiki session. So I've had a similar experience, and it was the same thing where it's like I've been thinking for years about a general thing, and there was just never anything specific. And then I was like, oh, that's exactly what I need. And it has words that go with it, even though I'm not going to have the words on there, but just like, all of a sudden it was like, ta-da, that's the finished thing that you need to have. So
Perfect.
That's cool. Okay, so you mentioned recently Instagram, and I know Instagram is a huge part of your life and a huge part of your community. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about what Instagram has meant or it does mean to you and how you use it and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Ah, Instagram is like my journal and my, I like to call it my artist studio.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've always loved photography, and so I love taking beautiful photos, finding beautiful photos, and the posts that I write are a lot of times pretty long.
Mhm.
And that feels good to me. You know, it's like I use that space to kind of like work through whatever is coming up. And similar to what I was just saying, it's like sometimes I learn things that I didn't know about myself or about the world or the universe, simply by creating that space to creatively write about, you know, whatever I'm experiencing. And so, yeah, it's like, to me, Instagram is a place for personal exploration and transformation. And one of my favorite examples of how that can work is through, like, you know, your bio information, what you say about yourself. And the backstory on this is that, you know, as I was evolving through my first steps on my entrepreneurial journey, and you know, going to all these network events and handing out business cards and stuff, and there's this kind of like phrase in the you know, business community that you're supposed to say, like, whenever you meet someone at a networking event or something, you know. So it's like, you know, you go up to someone and they're like, oh, hey, like, you know, I'm James, and it's like, oh, I'm Rachel, and it's like, oh, good to meet you, Rachel, what do you do?
What do you do? Right.
Yeah. And so then, you know, like, kind of the default answer is like, oh, I'm a teacher, you know, or you know, whatever it is that you're doing. I'm a doctor, I'm a mechanic. And then, you know, it's kind of like the person's like, oh, well, you know, like my aunt's a teacher too. And then that kind of stops the conversation, you know. So it's kind of like, but so there's this kind of like phrase that you say instead of saying that. And so, you know, for me, like, instead of saying like, oh, well, you know, I'm a teacher, then I would say, oh, well, I work with entrepreneurs and creatives all over the world to help them find the clarity and the courage to share themselves authentically. And so then, like, it didn't actually say what I do. And so then the person gets curious, or maybe they recognize someone else or themselves in that description. And so then they ask other questions. They're like, oh, well, what does that mean? What do you do? How do you do that? And so the whole purpose of that is to create a conversation. So I just thought it was a big game. And I was like, that's a bunch of hooey. I don't want to play that. And so I just thought that if someone asks me, what do I do? And then I tell them like the most far out thing that they could imagine, then they're like, what? And then I'm like, yes, let me tell you. So I started saying, like, instead of saying I'm an acupuncturist, I would, you know, and sometimes, and actually printed it on my business card. So, you know, people are like, oh, let me, you know, like, let me have your card, I'll call you, whatever. And so then they would get my card and they would be like, oh, inner alchemist, what does that mean? And I was like, excellent, let's have a conversation. So your Instagram bio can actually do the same thing. And, you know, God bless all the trees that I had to recycle for all of my personal transformation. But now you can do it without harming any trees, simply by changing your Instagram bio. And so you can write, you know, something. I like to have something like, you know, kind of descriptive and actually like true, or like, you know, approachable about like what I do. And then I like to have something that's a little bit farther out there, which makes people kind of question. And also I love to appear audacious. And so, like, you know, standing in front of people, like saying that I'm a Lumerian priestess or, you know, a mermaid water dragon, it's like, who is that? Like, like someone calling themselves that. But there's a really funny effect that you get by changing your Instagram bio and by naming and claiming these aspects of yourself that seem weirder or woo-woo or farther out there. Because what happens is that, and this is a really safe place to do this, because Instagram comments and feedback is generally left in the photos, and it's generally about the photos that are corresponding. And so not many people are going to see a change in your bio and then write you a comment about the change in your bio. I mean, like, except maybe me or anybody who's taken my class. But what you have when you change your bio, you have and put in something that's a little bit bold and audacious, is you have the felt experience of standing in front of Lord knows who, right? Because it's like, unless you have a private Instagram profile, like, yeah, you might have like 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people following you, but then you also have the whole other periphery of the Instagram world. And who knows, because those are people who look at your profile but aren't actually following you. Mm-hmm. So you have this felt experience of standing in front of X amount of people and saying, why, yes, I am a Lumerian priestess.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so what that does to you is, as you are walking around with your phone in your pocket, having this felt experience, you actually begin to embody that. You actually begin to be like, whoa, there are who knows how many people out there viewing and seeing and perceiving me as this person, this persona, that is this costume that I'm choosing to try on for this moment. And then you start living like that, or then you start living like that, and then you find, oh, that isn't actually quite accurate. Maybe there's another version of that. Maybe I can edit it a little bit to find, because as I'm walking in those shoes of that persona, I'm finding out more truths, and so I can change it to be more accurate.
Right. And I think that's really, really important. Safe space is such an important aspect of authenticity. Exploring who you are, I think, is something like you can be authentic, and that your authentic self is probably going to change over time. There may be threads that are consistent, but there's probably some things, especially if you're going through a transition or many transitions, where you feel called to explore something and you're not sure if it's the right thing or if it's going to actually fit the way that you hope it will. And I think that is the beauty of safe spaces. That's the beauty of finding a community of people, or a place like Instagram where it's safe to express and practice these things without a lot of negative blowback, where you can, you have the support and the space to explore. I think that's really a really insightful thing that you've happened upon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of kind of like if you're training for something, so it's like you go to your practice and you have your training that you do, and then you go out into the world and then you have your performance, or you actually have to do these things. And so
you go to the dance studio and you have to practice dancing so that when you perform it's actually decent.
Totally. Yeah. Or, you practice, public speaking, so that, as you like speak to people, it doesn't have to be on a stage, but it's like, you just become a better communicator. Right.
Totally. That's, I think, really important. And I like the idea of expressing both something that's approachable and audacious. I remember when I first had the idea to to do Awaken Authenticity, I was terrified because it felt so audacious. Like, who am I to call myself authentic or to help other people explore their authentic selves? It felt really scary and just like, well, I think I could do a good job of it, but like, who the hell am I to think I can call myself someone who can help other people? And the more people that I talked to, the more I realized that it was really needed. And like, oh gosh, like, audacious or not, this is really important work that people are clamoring for. And I feel like I can do it. And so it's like, yeah, trying it out is so important to feeling like you can do it. Recently, I've been having conversations about authenticity with just people in my everyday life, obviously. And something that people often say is like, I feel authentic, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm qualified, which is something that I think is like, I think that's really common, the whole imposter syndrome. But with something like being a mermaid water dragon or being a Lemurian princess, like there is no qualification given for those titles, right? Like these are things that you've explored or are exploring for yourself, that you're the only one that can tell you whether you're these things or not. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about just, you know, if you're looking for qualifications or if you're looking for approval, I guess, or something, and whatever it is that you feel like you're called toward doesn't have something that has a ready answer or a ready place where you can find that approval, how does that feel, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, such a good question. Well, I mean, you know, I think it's like, you know, first of all, it is like, you know, in search of like qualifications and educating yourself and, you know, getting certified and things, like if you're doing work that's like, you know, working with other people, it's like, yeah, you need to do that. Like, you know, like you need to, like, I wasn't just calling myself an acupuncturist and like sticking needles in people without having gone to school and like, you know, pass the boards and stuff.
Right. And I want to stop you there for a moment, because we talked about professionality, and talked about wearing black as your like moniker to yourself, that you were professional. And I just want to say that throughout the time that I've known you, no matter what you wear, you have always stood out as someone who seems very professional and approachable. And it's not because of what you wear, it's because of your integrity. Like no matter what it is that you're exploring or expressing or sharing in the world, you always do it with integrity. And to me, that is what professionality is. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yes, get your certifications if you have to have certifications.
Yeah, do your due diligence. And you know, and so what I noticed about myself as I was, you know, just like observing myself moving through these experiences, was that I was really hung up on the fact that I was a licensed acupuncturist, you know, and it was like I was putting it behind, you know, my name on my email signatures. It was on my business cards, like the initials LAC. On my voicemail, when you called me, you know, it said you've reached Rachael Webb, licensed acupuncturist, and what I witnessed, and this is my own journey, but it's like what I witnessed was that I was kind of like, you know, holding that like as something in front of me, and it was almost kind of like I was like, you know,
like a mask,
hiding behind it. Yeah, where it was like, oh yeah, like, you know, I'm an acupuncturist, like, oh yes, like, so that was when I knew that like I had to stop. And like even though I was still an acupuncturist, I couldn't use that, you know, I had to take it off of my email signatures. I had to change my voicemail because I was like, oh, like I'm am hiding behind that.
Huh.
So so that's just like, noticing that. But one thing that I think that is like, kind of an experience that people encounter, it's like, and I think it's definitely different for different people. And I can like, as I'm like conceptualizing these words inside my head, it's like, oh, well, I can understand it through different like learning types, where it's like, if you're a kinetic learner, then you need to like do things to learn. Where if you're more of a visual learner, then like you do need to read things. Or it's like, it's like, depending on your astrology, it's like, how you learn, where your Mercury is. It's like, oh, well, you could have like different ways of understanding things that way. But, if you've done like any kind of work where it's like, you have a certification, or you've been studying, like, there's no certification for astrologers. It's like, you just have done chart readings, you've been studying it. It's a language that you have to learn. And so when you come to the place where the language comes really easily and people start asking you to speak that language to them, that's when you know that you're being invited to step out into that a little bit more. And but there's always that thing there, not always, but oftentimes there's that thing of like, I'm not done studying, I'm not enough, I don't have enough experience, I don't have enough certifications or inner authority in order to be able to call myself this or do this. And really, like, what I would want to say to those people who have that sensation is that really it's kind of like baptism by fire, but the best way to really learn something is to do it. It's kind of like, and this because you have such a scientific background too, is that you have your theory times in the class when you're like talking about different parts and things and diagrams and concepts and stuff, and then you have your lab time where you're actually like hands-on, like doing the work and seeing what happens, and that's really where the learning comes. So for example, it's like when I first decided to teach a class about Instagram, it was really because like so many people were asking me about it, and I just experienced this like huge like growth in front of people, and I was not doing it to like try to do anything. It was just like I wanted to play and have a place to express myself. So, but when I came to the place where I was ready to teach about it for the first time, I wanted to have the felt experience. And again, it's like, I'm obviously a kinetic learner because it's all about feeling. So hence when dancing, right? But I wanted to have the felt experience of what it was like to move from being a healer, where I was doing one-on-one work with individual people, to being a teacher. So I was like, I don't want to have people like booking with me at different times and not really knowing what my schedule is going to look like. I want to have a set schedule where I'm showing up to my class X amount of times per week, and I'm teaching this course, and I wanted to have that experience. So that was what I set up for myself. I don't have any background in teaching. I don't like, it's like I never went to any classes on how to teach or how to teach Instagram or anything like that. But it's just like, this is one thing that is so, so important, is that as we move through the world and create things, the very first thing to consider when you're creating something, whether it's a podcast, a blog, coaching business, or whatever, or a teaching schedule, is how is it going to feel for me? So it's not, is this a time slot when other people are going to be available? I'm trying to consider their work schedules, and like, it's counterintuitive, because you're thinking like, oh, I need to like make this like, teaching course. So I need to make it at times when people can come. And and I need to make it a price that people can afford and like all of this stuff, thinking about what are they going to think, right? But in my experience, when I have just like shut the computer, closed, like, cleaned my whole house, taken a hot bath and climbed into my bed and been like, if I could just do this exactly the way that I want to do it, and in a way that would make me feel in my integrity, most effective with my time and my energy, and charge a price that feels comfortable for the amount of effort that I'm putting in, and is it a time of day where I want to show up and do it? Because it doesn't matter if it's like a time that works with everyone else's schedule, but if that's like crunchy for me, I'm not going to want to show up. And like, that's like, like, so whenever you create something.
Thank you. You just gave us permission to do what is best for us.
Yeah. So whenever you create something, a teaching course, a podcast, an Instagram post, whatever, and it feels really good for you, don't question it.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's like when you are in so clear alignment with yourself and what works for you, your vibration is like, right? And so, but when you are not, when you are worried about how other people are going to perceive it, what they're going to think, if they're going to judge you, what is your family going to think, it's like I'm doing that, but like inside of a hat or something, it's like you can still hear the bell, but it's muffled. You're not really sure which direction it's coming from. And so, if you're the person out there swimming in the sea of all that is, and you hear that like bell of like, you're like, oh, I'm going over there.
Right. It's a
and so then the people who you're,
it's a clear beacon.
Yeah. So the people you're meant to serve can find you very clearly.
Right.
But if it's like, not clear because you're worried about what other people are going to think and if they'll accept it or whatever, your transmission gets diluted, and then people are out there and they're like, I heard that bell, but I'm not sure where it came from. Like, I wonder if I'll hear it again.
Right. I love that metaphor. That's such a perfect metaphor for this. And that brings me a little bit, and I'm watching our time. We're like, I feel like we've been talking for 5 minutes and it's almost been an hour. So we'll go quickly. But let's see, your Instagram is Soul Star Medicine. Is that right? And if you are into beautiful things and want to continue following Rachel's life and her journey, which I highly recommend because she's super inspiring and has beautiful posts all the time, please go find her on Instagram. That's my favorite place to follow you. Oh my gosh, we haven't talked about free diving and we haven't talked about music very much, and all of these things are so important, but I feel like we might have to wait for another time. So thank you, Rachael, for spending this time with us. I really, really appreciate it. I know that you are very, you are bound to living in a life that has clear boundaries about what is okay to do, and you don't jam it packed. So I appreciate that you spent some of your non-jam packed life with us.
And I would just like switch one word, and I would say, instead of bound, I would say committed.
Thank you. Yes, committed. Yeah. And then if you, let's see, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you're like, I just really want to talk about this?
I have a feeling there's something on your paper that is asking for it, but I can't see your paper. So.
Let's see. Okay, let's see if there is anything. I just keep looking down to see if there is anything else. Oh, well, the last time that I spoke to you, I have this scribbled down. Stepping into who you need to be and what you have to offer the world.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh, that coincidentally actually like reminds me, and is also the same response to um, going back to yeah, it's being who you need to be and offering your sacred offer to the world. And that doesn't have to be business. Like that can just be your presence.
Yeah.
But because a compassionate listener is the most valuable thing. But one thing that just popped up as you were saying that, which I think is important to share, as people are, stepping into their authenticity and finding the courage to share themselves, is that it's really, really important for you to share your journey as it's happening. And to not wait until you get to this place of perfect. Or when you say, once I finish grad school, then I will start sharing. Or once I get my website finished, then I will start sharing. Or once I have my podcast out, then I will start sharing. I'm here to tell you that it's like moving forward and sharing your offerings that way is like, only some people will really get this, but it's like doing laps in the swimming pool and doing a flip turn at the end and missing the wall.
Ah!
So what happens is that if you do a flip turn and you hit the wall, your feet go down, your knees are bent, and you have this like awesome push off of the wall. And so then you just get to coast for a little while before you just to start swimming again. And you cover quite a bit of ground. Whereas if you turn too quick and you miss the wall, then your legs go out, and there's nothing there. And then you're like, and then you got to try and swim.
And you get water up your nose.
That's you have a personal experience with that one, I can tell. But because it's like, if you are waiting to share, especially, of course, I think of it through social media. If you're waiting to share, until you get your website done, or until you get your podcast put together, or until you finish grad school, or until you get that degree, or whatever, whenever you get to that place, when you think you're ready, there's no one there.
Right. Right.
So when you are in the middle of grad school and you are like taking pictures of your books and like all of your highlighters, and you're like, yourself with your messy bun and your glasses on, and you're like, you haven't had a shower for 5 days, and it's like, or it's like you're taking it, you're a fashion designer and you're like taking the pictures of your vision boards and your fabric samples, and going to the place where they're doing the sewing and like talking to those people. It's like sharing all of that like as imperfect and unfinished and as you think it is. That is what is actually the most important thing for you to share, is the imperfect before you get to the place of perfection. Because what you're doing is that the people who you are inviting to walk with you on this journey towards perfect, those are the people who are like, they've been with you the whole time.
Right.
So when you get to that place where your website is finished, your podcast is done, and you are ready to launch yourself out into the world, those are the people who have already been investing in you energetically with their time and their energy. And so then when you launch, when you put your program out there, when you make your offering, when you open your doors to do your massage practice, those are the people who are going to be like, hell yes, I remember when you were first starting out and you've transformed so much, you've worked so hard, and like, when can I sign up? And it's also that as you share that journey of imperfection and steady, tiny steps towards this goal that you have, you are also giving other people who are where you are or who are just starting out on the path that you're on permission to be imperfect and to share their journey. And the way that I like to describe this is that it's kind of like we're all climbing this mountain together, and it doesn't do anybody any good for you to get up to the top not having like leaved a trail of breadcrumbs, and for you to get up to the top and be like, hey guys, I don't know where the rope is, but come on, you know. But it's like, that's why I've like, you know, like I don't go through and delete any of my Instagram posts. Like you can see, if you go back, you'll scroll from when it was like I was just starting out and things were like way less than perfect, but that was me. And that's like, you know, there's a real self-acceptance that comes from leaving that trail of breadcrumbs and from being there with your hands like this so that someone else can put their foot in so that we can all climb this mountain together.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, that's a really important reminder, you know, just it's not the goal, it's the journey. I think the process is so important. And if you can't be at least accepting, if not happy with yourself along the way, then chances are you might not be accepting, if not happy with yourself once you've gotten to the goal. And goals change too. I know for myself that the goal has changed so many times, and I feel like I am in some ways closer and in some ways farther away from what I have expected for myself or what I hope for myself. And at the same time, I feel happier now than I've ever felt in my life. And it's because I've become happy with the process. It's because I've given myself the space in my day-to-day life to experience, share, and appreciate moment by moment. You know, all the little tiny baby steps, even if the baby step is boring or if the baby step is ugly or whatever it may be, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So my last question to everybody, and I feel like maybe we just answered it, but I want to give you the opportunity to say something different if you want to. And the last question is, if you were sitting across the table from somebody who was feeling stuck or frustrated in their life, what advice would you give them?
How can you turn it into a game?
Ooh. I love that.
Yeah, because it's like, it is the same answer as what we just gave, and it's that when you're on the journey, and it feels hard, if you can find some way to turn it into a game and start having fun, then the minute that you start having fun, you forget that you're on the journey and you forget that it was hard.
Ain't that the truth?
And then suddenly you're beyond the part that you thought you would never pass.
Totally.
Yeah.
That is wise wisdom. Thank you. So with that, I will say good night.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you everyone who is listening and watching this at any point, at any time. We felt you in our field, and this conversation was really facilitated by your energy. And so really honoring each and every one of you who has listened all the way to this point to receive all of these nuggets of wisdom, and sending out endless blessings and love and light for you on your journey, and for you as you begin to share yourself more authentically and peel off more of the layers, because it is a challenge, and it is the great work for us now. So thank you for all of your courage and for your brave hearts on this journey. Thank you so much, Alyssa.